Hey guys, it's Emily and welcome to a new episode of Books Around the World, in which I read books set in different cities, countries, and continents. So for this episode, we're doing things a little bit different. Instead of reading books that are set in a specific destination, we're actually going to be focusing on a genre. So as you can tell by the title, this one is going to be dedicated to romance. As today, as I am uploading it, it's Valentine's Day, I thought we would take a little romantic excursion and read romance books where the main characters travel. So for this video, I have 3 books that I'm going to be reading. First, we have 80 Days Elsewhere by Dyer. This one takes place all over the globe. Then we have One Hot Italian Summer by Karina Halley, and this one, as the title suggests, takes place in Italy. And finally, we have Shipped by Angie Hockman. This one takes place on a cruise in the Galapagos Islands. I am super excited for this episode because romance is one of my favorite genres. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I have decided to start with 80 Days Elsewhere by Dyer. I'm super excited to dive into this one because it's described as the amazing race meets around the world in 80 days as a woman desperate to save her family bookstore falls for a competition. And I am so excited. Basically, it follows my character Romy, who works at this bookstore that her uncles own in New York City. And one day they get a new landlord, and the landlord threatens to triple the rent, I think, which might just shut down the bookstore. So Romy, as a way to save the bookstore, decides to take on this job at Ex Libris Adventure, which is a travel agency that specializes in recreating literary travels. And her task is to retrace the step of Phileas Fogg in Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. And if she manages to do it on time, she'll get a full-time job at this travel agency and a bonus, which is kind of her incentive to go and get it because this could save the bookstore. So I'm super excited as this will take place all over the world. I am so excited to travel throughout this book. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but one of her competitors is none other than the new landlord's nephew, and I think she's going to fall for him. I'm super excited about this because I think it might be a enemies to lovers kind of romance, and obviously there's a lot of traveling involved, and I'm just very much excited. I had already read the first 60 pages back in August because this book came out a while back, and I had an arc of this initially and I didn't read the arc on time, so I got the physical copy and I started reading it, but then because of readathons and other commitments, I just never really got the time to pick up the book again. So I will be rereading the first 60 pages because it's been a while. But yeah, I'm very excited and this book sounds so good, so I cannot wait to dive in. Alright, so I am on page 207 of 80 Days Elsewhere, and I have thoughts. So far, I wouldn't say that this is a romance. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of interaction between the main character and the love interest, and their interactions have been very platonic. There is not a lot of romantic interest there, and I'm about halfway, and I'm kind of surprised by that because this is published by Berkeley, and usually Berkeley publishes romances, and they're one of my favorite publishers because of the romances that they publish, but this one is just not really a romance so far. I don't know if the romantic aspect will be more important in the second half of the book, but if you're someone who likes very character-driven stories where the love interest and the main character are interacting a lot and you can see the romantic build-up, I'm not sure this one would be for you. If you're someone who likes really plot-heavy books, I think you're gonna enjoy this one because there's a lot of action happening. It's more so about the main character's development and her stepping outside of her comfort zone and just attempting to complete this race against this guy, but also against time. Well, I think you would really enjoy this because there's a lot of mishaps and adventures that happen, and it's a very fun story overall, but I don't know if I would call this a romance per se. Also, one of the things that bothered me is the French in this book, and I will always mention it. If the French is bad in the book, I will say it because I'm a French speaker, so I hate it when I see books that have butchered French in them, and this one is one of them. It's mostly about the grammar, to be honest. It bothers me when the grammar isn't right, and that happened with this book. There were a couple of mistakes here and there, and it's not that hard, people, to get someone to revise your work. Your 3rd grade or high school French doesn't cut it in this case. There were also a couple of skips in logic which kind of bothered me. I had to go back a couple of times because when new information was introduced, I wasn't sure if we knew that information already, or sometimes I thought the author had just said the opposite. So obviously that kind of bothers me because it's not sailing smoothly. I actually have to go back, and I hate when I have to do that because that means that it's not clear for the reader what we're supposed to know and what we don't know. So far it's fine. I was expecting a little bit more out of it, if I'm being completely honest. I had such high expectations for it, and so far it's fine. It's not exactly what I wanted, but I won't lie, this is actually quite a fun story, so I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. And like I said, I'm kind of waiting for the romantic aspect of it to become more prominent because so far we haven't really gotten any of that, and this is one of the reasons why I picked this book up, so I'm quite looking forward to seeing how this will go. I guess we'll have to continue reading to see where this goes. So I finished reading 80 Days Elsewhere by Dyer, and I'll be honest, I'm not too sure what I think about this one. While there is a lot that I liked about the book, I really enjoyed like the plot heavy story and the misadventures that our main character went through. There's also some things that disappointed me about the book. For starters, this isn't a romance. Let's clarify that right off the bat. I would not consider this book to be a romance. There's some romantic action happening in like the last maybe 150 pages of the book, but even I, who is a big romance advocate, I love reading romance stories, and like this vlog is all about reading romance, I do not consider this book to be a romance. I don't know why it is categorized as one. I don't know if it's because the publisher, which is Berkeley, typically publishes romances, and that's why this book is considered a romance, but there's almost no romance in this whatsoever. And like I didn't really see how our main character and the love interest went from this platonic relationship to the more than platonic, I guess, relationship that they had in the end. And so for me, this wasn't a romance. It was more so about the main character's growth and her story and just her evolving as a person rather than a romance. Like yes, there was a little bit of like a romantic aspect to it, but overall this wasn't about the romance. At some point they kissed and I was like, wait, where is that coming from? Like we don't see the romantic tension between them ever. Also, I think this book tried too much to be something that it was not. As our main characters travel to different countries that have very different realities than our own, obviously, we see some social commentary on the author's part that I just don't really see why it had to be included. Like she talks about racism and refugees and activism, and honestly it felt a little bit out of place. Don't get me wrong, I'm really glad that those discussions were part of the book, but as this is written by a white woman, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. This was supposed to be a light-hearted book, and I feel like the author tried to make this so much bigger than it had to be, and I just didn't see how it connected with the plot that well. It just didn't make that much sense to me as to why it had to be included within the narrative. Also, can we talk about how massive this book is? This book is 450 pages, and it felt so tedious and long to read. Maybe it's because there was so much to unpack, but it felt so long to read. I was on page 300 and I was like, I can't believe that I still have 150 pages of this book to go through. It's not even that it was boring, because there's a plot twist at every turn. Like there's always something happening. I don't know if it's because I was waiting for the romance and it took like a lot of time for it to happen. Overall, I think this would be maybe a 3 out of 5 stars. I'm not really sure how to rate it because it was good on some level, but it was just so disappointing on a lot of aspects, probably because of my own expectations. It was not what I was expecting to get out of it, unfortunately. So maybe a 3. I don't know if it would be a 2, but a 2 feels too harsh. I'm not really sure how to rate this yet. So last night I started reading Shipped by Angie Hockman, and I am so pleased to say that I am absolutely loving this book so far. So this is described as the unhoneymooners meets the hating game in this clever romantic comedy following a marketing manager who is forced to go on a cruise with her arch nemesis when they're up for the same promotion. The Unhoneymooners and the Hating Game are 2 of my favorite romance books, so I was kind of hesitant diving into it because I was afraid it wouldn't live up to the hype, but so far I am absolutely loving it. I had only planned to read like a couple of chapters before I went to bed last night, but I ended up binge reading this for like 2 hours. I'm already halfway through. I'm on page 148 and I'm having such a blast reading this. It's so fun, super funny. I have laughed out loud several times. This book has elicited some reactions out of me. I'm someone who's very reactive when I read a book, so if the book is well written and engaging, I will like ooh and ah and laugh and cry if needed. But this one is so funny. I have been mad at the main character. I have been like gasping at some stuff. I just have been really enjoying this. I'll be honest, like the reviews for this have been okay, but not like amazing. I've seen a lot of like 3 stars, some 4 stars, and not that many 5 stars. And the biggest complaint that I've seen is that this book doesn't live up to like the 2 books that it's compared to. But personally, so far, I'm absolutely loving it, and I can totally see this becoming a 5 out of 5 for me. So hopefully I will not be disappointed by the second half of the book, but I could hardly put the book down last night. So I am looking forward to continuing it tonight. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to finish it. And so hopefully I will enjoy it just as much as I did in the first half of the book. finished reading Shift by Angie Hockman, and I'm happy to report that the second half of the book held up just as well as the first half. So I think I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I had such an incredible time reading it. I loved our two main characters. I loved their dynamic and their banter. I just love the chemistry that they had together, and even without being a couple, I loved them as a pair. I also really enjoyed the setting of this book. I haven't really mentioned it before, but this takes place in the Galapagos Islands, and the descriptions were so lush and vivid. I felt like I was there. I read this in the middle of winter, like here in Canada. It is very cold and snowy at the moment, so this was the perfect break because I felt like I was in the Galapagos Islands. I wanted to be on this cruise with these characters. I wanted to go on these hikes and see all of the beautiful nature and the fauna, and it was just such the perfect break for me in the middle of winter. The only reason this book is getting a 4.5 out of 5 stars is because there was this mention of grief. Basically, we have this one character who says that the only reason they got through their grief and why they got back up and running, I guess, is because of this other character. And to me, it felt so far-fetched and like eye-rolly. I was just like, oh, really? You went there? I just felt like this was so cliche, and I didn't love that so much about it. But other than that, it was incredible. I loved the ending. It was such a girl power moment, and as someone who is also working in digital marketing, I really loved reading about that aspect of it. And so the ending was really satisfying for me. I just loved the way it ended. I won't dive too deep into it because I don't want to spoil it, but it was really good. And overall, I would highly recommend it if you guys are looking for something lighthearted and fun. This is a perfect break in the middle of this cold and harsh winter. That being said, that means that we're now ready to dive into our third and final book, which is One Hot Italian Summer by Karina Halley. I'll be honest, this is probably the one that I was most apprehensive to read. Even though I've heard great things about it, I know it deals with grief and a single dad, so I was kind of afraid that this would be a sob fest. Like, I am not in the mood for a sad story at the moment, so I was a little bit hesitant diving into it, but I have started reading it. I am currently on page 88, and so far it's been amazing. So this book is described as a writer looking for inspiration in Tuscany. One hot Italian single dad. This summer is going to be a scorcher, and if that doesn't entice you to read this, I don't know what will. Basically, we're following our main character Grace, who is a writer, and her writing partner died not so long ago, and now Grace has to dive into her next project and write her next novel, which will be the first one that she will write all on her own. But she's experiencing writer's block, and so her agent tells her, hey, I have this villa in Tuscany. If you want to go, you'll be all alone, and so you can focus on your writing. So Grace goes off to Tuscany, and when she gets there, there's this man living there with his son, and that's where Claudio, our love interest, comes in. So he is an artist, and he has this son, like I mentioned. And so far, it's been such an amazing story. It's set in Tuscany, and it's so atmospheric. Even though we haven't really seen a lot of Italy so far, like our main character has mostly stayed at the villa, you can already feel this ambiance and like the heat and just like the flavor of Italy, and I am so happy about it because I'll be honest, like I was afraid that this was going to be all smut and no like descriptions or like travel whatsoever, but it's really not the case so far, and I'm having a great time reading it. The first encounter between our main character and the love interest was just hilarious. I was laughing like a hyena. It was just so funny. I couldn't stop laughing. I had to stop and like put down the book and laugh for a moment because it was so hilarious. I also really love Vinny, who is Claudio's son. He is so blunt and he tells it like it is, and I love that about him. It makes for very funny moments from time to time, and I'm having such a great time reading it. I'm kind of surprised by it because I was expecting it to be another cheesy like smutty romance, but so far it's a lot more than that, and I really love it. I cannot wait to see where it goes. Hopefully it will continue to live up to my current enjoyment of it. So I finished reading One Hot Italian Summer by Karina Halley, and I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 stars. So I really enjoyed this one, and I loved the characters, I loved their relationship, and I loved seeing them grow as people. However, the second half of the book lost me a little bit. I feel like we were running around in circles. It was getting a little bit repetitive because on one hand we had Grace, who wanted to keep their relationship a secret, and on the other end we had Claudio, who was very vocal about his feelings for Grace, and he was kind of pushing her to come to the same realization as he had, which was that they both had feelings for one another and that this was more than just casual sex. And for a while I felt like it was repetitive and that we were just always going over the same issues over and over again, and there were also a lot of sexy scenes. I don't complain because they were really well written, but I feel like we had them every single chapter chapter in the second half of the book, so I was kind of losing hope a little bit, but the last 100 pages saved it for me. I loved the change in scenery because they went on a trip to Florence, and I loved the conflict. I just really loved how it came about, and so I am giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Also, if you're looking for a book that will give you all of the Italy vibe, this is perfect. I just loved the ambiance, and even though like we didn't travel a lot throughout Italy, I loved seeing Grace and Claudio's day-to-day life and just getting immersed in the culture. So this was a really fun read. I loved Vanny. He is probably my favorite character, and we saw him a little bit less in the second half of the book, and I think it might be why I didn't like the second half of the book as much, because he was always away because we were focusing on Claudio's and Grace's relationship. I kind of missed him, so I was really glad to see him back towards the end and like seeing how important his part in all of this was. So overall, really liked it. I would highly recommend it if you guys are looking for something fun and sexy. So I guess that concludes our Romance Around the World episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Overall, I think I would recommend pretty much everything that I've read throughout this vlog. I just think you have to tailor your expectations to each book. For example, if you're looking for something very angsty, I would highly recommend that you check out Shipped by Angie Hockman. It's probably my favorite one that I've read in this vlog. But if you're looking for something that goes a little bit deeper into the characters' emotions and that is a little bit sexier, I would highly recommend that you check out One Hot Italian Summer by Karen Halley. If romance is not really your thing, like you don't mind it in the background but you don't want it to be the forefront of the book, and if you're looking for a book that covers a lot of ground and where the main character is really challenged and grows throughout the story, then I would recommend that you check out 80 Days Elsewhere by Dyer. So I guess that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had so much fun filming it, and I'm so glad to be back filming Books Around the World episodes. I took a little break in January and I'm glad to be back on track, and I'm hoping to post one video in this series per month, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I already have the next one planned and I am so excited to start filming and reading for it. If you have any travel romance books recommendations, please leave them in the comments down below. I love reading romances, and travel is one of my favorite things to read about as well. And I would also like to know what destination you would like to see featured in this series. And I guess that's it, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!